Okay, so please state your name.
Madonna Campbell.
Okay.
And how are you related to me, which is Grandma on this channel?
You are my niece.
Yep.
Your mother was my sister.
Right. And so Jax would be your, what we decide, great
Great
nephew? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But he has a question for you.
Sure.
What was the first car that you've ever owned?
The first car I ever owned. It was a 1954 Ford. Marvin and I purchased it after he came home from the army in Korea. This is right before we got married.
Okay.
We got married a week after he got home.
Wow.
Yes.
And I know we already talked off camera. You said that was pretty common back then for the women back home to have the wedding all planned, and then everything would be done by the time that the man come home, basically?
Well, yeah, but ours was a little close. That gave us only a week,
Yeah.
and had his train been delayed somewhat, it could have caused a lot of problems.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit. What is your best memory of my mom?
Oh, best memory of your mom? Probably when I got married, and your mom was my bridesmaid, and she was so beautiful. And I, as I was leaving to go away, I realized how much she meant to me, and I was just going away on a honeymoon. But just she and I parted. We both had tears, and yeah. But Mary Lou and I had some good times together. Yeah,
You did.
we really did. Mary Lou worked hard, and of course we all did in those days. But we had fun together, and it was really hard losing, and I still, so many times, wish I could pick up the phone and call her.
What would you say to her if you could?
I would say, Mary Lou, I love you, and I miss you, is what I would say. Anyway, excuse me.
What was your best Christmas?
My best Christmas?
Yeah.
When I was a child, Mary Lou and I got dolls for Christmas. And our dolls were just alike, and we thought they were twins, not knowing the difference. And that was really a fun Christmas.
What did the boys get? Do you remember?
One of the boys got a bicycle, and one of them got a dog one year,
A real dog?
a real dog.
Oh, like a
Yeah,
hunting dog or something?
like a big dog.
Aw.
Yeah. So anyway, our Christmases were not large Christmas. We got one or two gifts. And probably one of the better gifts that she and I got, my dad had a sister who gave him a dining buffet, and my dad took that buffet and made Mary Lou and I a table for our playhouse from that buffet. And we had a table and we had a couple chairs, and that was really special. Our playhouse was outside of our main house in Bowling Green, and my dad took windows and made us a glass playhouse. He put the windows up next to the house, and we had a playhouse that had an open door, and we had curtains in that playhouse, and of course we could see outside, because it was all windows. The windows had wood
Oh.
between the, whatever you want to say. And anyway, my dad was good about making things for us, but we enjoyed that playhouse for so many years.
Aw.
Oh, yeah. We were grown girls married, but when my dad took the playhouse down, we were a little bit sad because we had so many memories there. And our friends, a lot of kids from Bowling Green, girls would come and play with us,
Aw.
especially in the playhouse.
Sure.
Did you have like a school bus or did you walk to school?
I'm glad you asked. My dad was a school bus driver for 28 years. And back in those days, the school didn't provide the bus. The bus, like my dad, had to buy his own school bus.
Wow.
And so anyway, Mary Lou and my dad was not allowed to stop and pick us up to ride the bus. He was paid by the state, and it was not allowed. Until one day in the wintertime, it was so cold, and we had a long way to walk to school. And it was so cold that when my dad turned from the Highway 46 to the road that turned toward the school, my sister and I were at that area. And my dad stopped the school bus, opened the door, and he said, "Come get in." And we were so happy because we were just about frozen. It was so cold and a lot of snow on the ground. But anyway, my dad was a good bus driver.
That's cool.
Yeah, he had a
Was
lot
that
of.
a good job back then?
That was a job that was, it was a good job.
Was it?
Even though you really needed another job to substitute that.
Yeah.
So it worked in my dad's schedule because he was a carpenter and he was his own boss and he would get jobs so he could time the jobs that he took and then drive the school bus.
That worked.
So yeah, it worked. From Highway 46, there was a long ways to school. So my dad really, by the men having to buy their own bus, I can remember my mother being real close with money because my dad had to pay for the school bus. And it took several years to pay for it. So.
Can you describe Grandma and Grandpa Royer to Jack so that he can kind of get to know them a little
Grandma
bit?
and Grandpa Royer,
Your mom and dad.
oh, they were really good people. They both came from large families. In my dad's family, there were 14 children. Now, they didn't all live. 2 or 3 of them passed away as children. And my mother had a large family. She was from a large family, and her dad died at an early age and left my grandmother with 10 children. And the older boys had to get out and get them a job to help my grandmother support the rest of the children. And my grandmother also had a child that they never really knew what was wrong, but he never could walk. And he would, my grandmother, when she was cooking a meal, she had a large coal stove to cook on. And my mother's little brother that couldn't walk, he would crawl around on the floor in order to be close to his mother. And he passed away at an early age, but they never knew for sure what his problem was, his medical problem.
So probably.
But my mother and dad were good people. They worked hard. My mother would take my brothers of a morning when there wasn't school. She would take them out and they would have to help her build fence. They might have to till the garden or clear some of the pasture land for the cows to roam. My dad was a good dad. He worked hard. But he also had fun with us kids. He would often, he taught us how to play baseball, and he would get out of an evening and play baseball with us. And my mother worked hard. I can't remember her getting out as much playing because her work was day and evening.
Sure.
Yeah, she was a good cook. And we had a lot of people would come to our house.
For the food?
Because my mother's brothers and sisters, when they were grown and married, and my dad's, some of his sisters and brothers would often stop at my mother's house. You know why?
For the food.
She always had something. She always had something to eat. She'd always have pies or desserts or something, and they knew exactly.
Where to go.
And they enjoyed. Yeah, they enjoyed it very much.
And Grandpa Royer, from what I remember, is very, very quiet.
Yes.
He didn't say much.
He was. Daddy was quiet, but when he did say something, you wanted to listen because it was important. So, anyway,
Okay.
but they were very good people.
Okay.
And they passed it down and had skating parties for the grandkids.
Oh, yes. Yes, thanks, Marvana. My dad had driven a school bus, his own bus. He could drive it pretty much where he wanted to. And on Sundays, we lived in that little town of Bowling Green. There wasn't a lot to do, but there was a skating rink in Brazil. And oh my goodness, my dad would get that bus out, park it uptown, and kids would come and get in that school bus. He would drive us to Brazil, north of Brazil, and we got to go roller skating. Because back then, a family didn't have two vehicles. They did well to be able to drive the one they had. But my dad would take the kids in Bowling Green, and oh, it was such a treat. And my dad roller skated himself. He could roller skate backward and forward.
Really?
Yes. And we've often talked recently, wonder how he learned. He could also ice skate.
I remember that.
Yeah, Dad could ice skate. So Mother and Daddy they were a good couple because they worked hard and they worked together and they planned for us kids together too.
And the roller skating continued on for us as grandkids.
Oh, yes.
They would rent the whole
Yes.
rink.
Yeah.
And as these
remember that.
grandkids came along, my dad also had skating parties, so the kids we could all go together as a team, and
Yeah, I remember
roller
those.
skate. Oh my, yes,
Yeah, those were fun.
they were fun days. Yeah.
Yep.
So they were. It's okay to work hard, and it's also good to have fun. And they planned both. Mother did. And Mother, the thing about them, and my mother would always have a big Sunday dinner. And we kids would come home from Sunday school, and my mother never knew how many were going to be at the table because the boys would invite their boyfriend to come on down and have dinner. And Mary Lou and I'd bring somebody home with us, not all the time, but quite often. And Mother she wouldn't say anything, she would just set another plate at the table. So, yeah, that's the way they grew up. Like I say, they really wanted the family to enjoy one another. And they did. They did. So
what, can you tell him a little bit about my mom? He hears about my mom from me and the girls, but I want to hear your perspective. What would you
Okay.
like for him to know?
Yeah, well, Mary Lou took a lot of mother and daddies. She had good times, Mary Lou did. And she worked hard. But she too would have nice meals and invite people in. People love to go to Mary Lou's. And the one thing about Mary Lou was God had given her a gift. And my mother worked hard doing laundry for people, ironing their clothes in order to have money to give Mary Lou and I piano lessons. She worked very hard for that. We took piano lessons from an old lady that was in her 90s then. And I would work hard to have my lesson ready for the next week. Mary Lou would go with me, and our music teacher would have us to do a duet because they were going to have a recital. And we would sit down and we'd play together. But Mary Lou would say to me, Donnie, she called me Donnie, show me where middle C is. She had been taking lessons, but she did not know where middle C was. But she could play the music. So we would start in and she would play, and my mother didn't know this, and neither did the music teacher for a long time. But Mary Lou did not know a note to play. God gave her a gift, and she could play just by hearing. She would hear a song, and she would sit down and play that song, and she could be all over the piano keys.
Oh, yeah.
And in her later years, older years, she belonged to the Eastern Star, and they were having a big episode at the Eastern Star, and this was held in Illinois, and the worthy matron asked her to be the pianist. Okay, so Mary Lou goes because she's been asked to do that, but she can't read any music. They gave her music, but she can't read it. So she had her friend. She didn't want anybody to know she couldn't read it. So she had her friend to go with her and sit beside her on the piano bench and turn the page as if she was reading.
Oh, wow. She fooled everybody.
She fooled everybody. No one knew.
Huh.
But that is a gift that Mary Lou had that was just, and after she passed away, I thought maybe I would get that gift. And I sat down one day to play the piano, but it wasn't my gift. It was only hers. But Mary Lou was a hard worker, and she was cute. When she was dating, oh my goodness, she had dates, you know.
Aw,
Oh yeah, she was.
she was
So
pretty.
She was as cute as she could be.
Yeah.
And she was small, you know, so she was very active. But she would have loved you kids.
Yeah.
She would have. Mary Lou was very proud of her family. And so anyway.
So what about my dad? What do you remember
Oh, and
about
your
my dad?
her dad, he worked, Marvin was a contractor, building houses and such. And her dad worked for Marvin in the later years. And he was a nice fellow. Wayne was just, you couldn't have wanted anybody any better than Wayne was. And the last day that he worked for us, the men always came by for their paycheck. He came to pick his up. He was very slow getting out of his truck to come in the house. And that wasn't Wayne. He wasn't real fast, but he wasn't. I said, "You don't feel good, do you?" He said, "How do you know?" I said, "I watched you get out of the truck." 6 weeks later, he was gone. He had passed. He had been diagnosed with cancer, and he had told me he had a doctor appointment that evening. But Wayne was a hard worker. Everybody liked Wayne. Well, they liked Mary Lou too, because they were a good couple. They were a cute couple, and they both would have been proud of you kids. Really.
But that couple
Yeah.
almost didn't happen, did it? Because what did she say whenever he asked to take her home?
Oh, yes. Mary Lou, we were at a ball game. And this, we always looked the boys over. And this boy came over to Mary Lou and asked to take her home. And she told him no. She told somebody, she said, I don't want to go with that old man. He was about, how many years was he older than her?
Only 5.
5, I was going
But
to say
Dad
4.
looked mature as
Yeah.
a young man.
Yeah.
And Mom would have still been that little cute thing. So
Oh, she was.
Probably looks wise, it looked like there was a bigger age range.
Yeah, look, bigger difference in that. But finally, she didn't go, she wouldn't let him take her home that night. But later on, then they began dating, and they fell in love. And we often teased Mary Lou about that old man.
So let's talk about this most fabulous day ever, which is April 24th, 1964. The most beautiful thing happened to Mom.
Oh, yeah, when
No,
Margaret
no.
was born.
Yep.
Well, Mary Lou, we lived in the small town of Bowling Green. She lived on a back street, and we lived in the front street. So it was just close space. The kids could walk to and from. I kept the boys, what Mary Lou was expecting.
You remember, because I took you down that road where we all used to live. So the house that I showed you was theirs, is what she's talking about.
Yeah. So anyway, I kept the 2 boys while Mary Lou was in the hospital, or went to hospital to deliver this baby. Well, so when we got word that Mary Lou had a little girl, we were all just thrilled to bits, because
I like
here
hearing
were
this
the
story.
2 boys.
It's the only thing that makes me feel good sometimes.
Yeah, oh, here were the 2 boys and a little girl. Couldn't wait. We couldn't wait till Mary Lou got home a few days later, a week later, with his little baby girl. And she was a doll. She really was. She was our pride and joy.
The
Really?
boys too.
And the boys were so happy that day that when we told them they had a little sister, they were so happy.
Well-
how many years difference between you and Rusty?
4.
4 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then 6 between me and Danny.
You and Danny, okay.
But I heard a story that Russell cried whenever he found out he wasn't getting a little brother, because my name was going to be Ronnie Joe.
Oh.
And he cried and said he wanted Ronnie Joe. Loretta tells that story, I think.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Well, that I don't remember.
That's all right. We'll just keep it like your version.
There
I
you
like
go.
your
That's
version
better, isn't it? Yeah, but Owen Wayne was so proud. Golly.
All right. Well, do you
I have one last question.
Yes.
Talk about Mary Lou and the trips to Florida. Mary Lou and the trips to Florida.
All
Yes.
the fun times
Yes.
and the craziness that ensued.
Mary
She
Lou.
paid for all of her grandkids.
Mary
Oh,
Lou,
yes.
yes.
I
Jackson.
felt like it took
Jackson.
every penny she had.
Mary Lou, Marvin and I lived in Florida in the winter time. And Mary Lou wanted to take all of her grandkids to Florida. So she flies down.
Uh-huh.
She buys an airline ticket for all those kids and flew to Florida.
Which would have been your mom too.
Yeah. And in fact, she had a van rented.
Yeah.
The van was supposed to be at the airport when they got in. but the van didn't. Anyway, we went to the airport too when Mary Lou came in with kids. But anyway, she gave those kids a whole week. It was a week, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Of time in Florida where they had a great time.
Oh, they had a
And she
blast.
paid for all of their expenses.
How old
Yeah.
was she?
Should have been in high school. Yeah. I'll have to ask her how old,
Yeah.
because I went too.
You did?
Yeah.
You were a grandkid?
I wasn't a grandkid. Your mom was in high school.
I
She
think,
needed an adult to help.
I think Mary Lou, I think it cost her like $1,100 to rent that van.
Oh, that van.
What year was that?
It
that we
did.
went down
Yeah.
there? I think it was like 2001 or 2. I think your mom was almost a senior. And the van, once we got it, was I keep calling it a BA van. It was like, I don't know, 12 or 14 passenger.
Yeah.
How much was that?
I don't know, but listen. So my nephews thought they'd be extremely cool and sit in the very back. And every time a cool song come on or we stopped at a stoplight, they would rock it back and forth. And it's all fun and games until cops arrive.
What?
And
Really?
the cops pulled us over.
Why? Because the van
And-
was moving?
So the van is here, so there's a cop car here, here, and here. We weren't going nowhere. And I'm driving.
You're driving?
Yeah, so they asked me for my ID. Well, I'd left my wallet back at Madonna's house.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, crapola, you know, and the story just gets bigger and bigger. And I'm sure the cops are like, right. But the funny thing is, I can remember numbers for some reason. So I knew my driver's license number. And so then that checked out. But the reason why they pulled us over was that van didn't have any plates on it. The rental company forgot to put the plates on it, and then here we are rocking it like ding
Well,
dongs.
yeah.
And my mom is in the back saying, "I can raise my shirt if I need to get out of this ticket." It was fun, and like Madonna said, memories were made on that day. My goodness, and that whole
yeah.
trip. So a lot of fun.
Yeah. There was a house next to us in Florida, and Marvin's brother had been renting it, and they were gone. They were on vacation, and you got to
Oh,
stay
is
there.
that whose it was? Okay, it was a nice house.
It was very nice.
Okay, Marvana, do you have any other questions? Well, nope, she isn't here. Turn it back around. So, some of these questions I take from some leadership training that I take. So, what 3 words would best describe you? What
Would
do you
describe
think?
me. Well, I'm an older lady now.
That's not a word to describe you. I want to
What
know.
word would you describe me?
I know I caught you off guard.
Yeah, you did.
And the words that I use to describe myself in the business situation, in the business world, is much different than what you might describe yourself.
What are yours?
Driven, passionate, and loyal. That's me. And that might be also personal too, maybe as you think about it. It's kind of an internal thinking that you.
Yeah, true. Well, I think I'm pretty personal too.
Yes.
I don't, well, I just am. And I think deeply. Yeah, I think pretty deep.
Yeah, you're a deep thinker.
Uh-huh.
I am too. I didn't know where I got it from.
Right,
But yes,
yeah.
I am.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I try to be kind to others. So,
She does more
anyway.
than try. She is kind to others.
Well, I don't know
Absolutely.
about that, but anyway.
Yep. So, based on that, I can't read my writing, but I just want to know, and this is something that I ponder all the time, and I ask people, and I know it's weird, but I want to know what people use to describe me, or what is their opinion of me, and then I go a little bit deeper, like what do I want to be remembered for? Because I want to be remembered. What do I want to be remembered for? I want to be remembered as someone who wants to make a difference in whatever realm I'm in, because it could
Right.
change 2 years from
Right.
now. So I want to make a difference. I want to be known as a good mother. And
you are,
this is tough.
and you're kind.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
are kind.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't want to be judgmental.
Right. But you're kind and you're loving to other people. People like being around you.
Yeah. I think so, because I'm cool and fun.
Right.
Always have to
You're a
make-
lot of fun.
The funness we talked about, the funness and the comedic is in every intrinsic person in the Royer family. I mean, you're funny, Marvana's funny, I'm funny,
Well,
my
yeah.
kids are funny.
Well-
so somewhere, somebody. I don't know,
Well,
was it
my
Grandpa?
dad was funny.
Grandpa?
It wasn't Grandpa.
Okay.
He was funny,
Okay.
and Mother would go along with, because they like to have fun. And they were, of course, they were very serious too, but they liked having fun.
Grandma was funny when she wasn't even trying to be funny. To
Well,
be honest.
yes, she was.
Her actions.
Uh-huh.
Gosh, the story about whenever, was it Grandpa that went off and left?
Oh yeah, left
Grandma?
her and
Oh,
in
it's her
Terre
turn.
Haute.
Yeah.
The only time Mother could, back in those days, we didn't have two cars. We did well to have one. And there's what's called a
Listen to this story.
bus drivers convention in Terre Haute. And Mother got a chance to ride with my dad to Terre Haute because she could shop.
Which was big, because we didn't go to Terre Haute like we did now.
We didn't. It was like going to
Hollywood.
like Chicago.
Yeah.
And so anyway, forgot what my story is.
About Grandpa leaving Grandma.
Oh yeah. So Grandpa
What?
had him.
This
He had to
story.
pick the kids up from school after the meeting was over with, and he had told my mother to meet her at a certain place at a certain time, and my mother wasn't there. She was still shopping, and Daddy waited and he waited, and he finally had to leave and go home to the school, pick up the kids, and take them home from school. And here was Mother on the street corner in Terre Haute, and there was no way home.
I
And
bet.
that became a very sore between my mother and my dad from then on. I mean, they made up, but Mother was so mad at him that he went off and left her. Well, he didn't have a choice. It was either leaving her or leaving the school kids.
This was before cell phones, obviously.
Yeah, no cell phones.
And Grandma could be a little
could
bit
mail it.
extra sometimes.
Mother could let you know. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
We've heard this story many generations,
Oh, yeah,
many years.
I'd reckon.
You haven't
So
heard
if
it?
you want to take a break.